Thank you, everybody, for watching I-80 Sports. I'm Brian, he's Tom, and today we're not only talking about news around the NHL, but we're also talking about the Stanley Cup. Thank you all again for watching I-80 Sports. Make sure you follow us on the I-80 Sports website at i80sports.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at i80sports_sportsnhl and our Facebook groups, the I-80 Sports discussion group. And make sure you catch us every Monday night for your daily dose of NHL content. Tom, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well, doing well. We have some interesting goings on lately in the world of hockey. So let's get right to it.
Let's dive head first. So before we talk about the Stanley Cup, which is what everybody wants to talk about right now, we had an interesting week kind of leading up to the Stanley Cup through the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. So we need to talk about little news and notes around the league real quick. So we're going to start our discussion today with talking about the Eric Staal trade. So if you had not heard, Eric Staal, who played for the Minnesota Wild, was traded to the Buffalo Sabres straight up for Marcus Johansson. Early thoughts about this, Tom. What do you think?
You know what? I do think that this is Buffalo. In a way, this is Buffalo kind of showing Jack Eichel, okay, we're serious now. We've heard your demands. We've heard that you're not happy with what's going on here. And I think it's the Buffalo management telling Jack Eichel, Jack, we're serious. We want to get this team going. We want to get this off the ground. And by bringing in a veteran and somebody as established as Eric Staal, you can play him. You can play him in center behind Jack Eichel. You could play him on Eichel's wing. You could do either or. And I think in Buffalo's case too, I don't think they want to make the same mistakes the Islanders did with John Tavares. Remember when Tavares was in Long Island? He was there about 10 years, but they never really did anything to try and make the team a contender. They never really did anything to try and get him any help. I mean, I guess Thomas Vanek you can make a case for. But, I mean, they never really did anything. They only made the playoffs twice. The Sabres have not made the playoffs once since they got Eichel. Eichel's been there 5 years now. And I just think with Eichel in the media being the way he is, and believe me, as some people are saying, oh, the guy's not a team player. No, he is a team player. He wants to win. He wants the team to be good. But he's trying to say, listen, guys, I can't do this all by myself. This isn't basketball. So I think bringing Staal in is them basically giving him a little good faith and saying, hey, yeah, Jack, we're going to try and help you. We want to try and build this thing back up. We want to try and become a contender. We want you to be the centerpiece. And we feel like Eric Staal will take some pressure off because he's been there before. He's a veteran. He's won a cup. He's been a captain before. And, like I said, Eric Staal, is he the same Eric Staal as he was back in 2006? Absolutely not. But he can still contribute.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I think, honestly, this is a good move on both sides of the coin. When you really kind of think a little bit, into the deeper dive of a trade like this, it like on the surface, it's just like, all right, it's Eric Staal straight up for Marcus Johansson. What of it? Well, this is a good move for Buffalo. Now they don't need to rush their prize prospect Dylan Cousins through development, and they don't have to rush him through the system. They can give him another year in juniors to pack on a few pounds and get used to the faster transition of the NHL game. So that way, when he comes up, you can better figure out, okay, is he going to be a center at the NHL game, or do we think that he would work better as a dynamic winger? This is also good for Minnesota, who's kind of been in need for a top six winger, and Buffalo, because they were kind of hurting for center depth, they were using Marcus Johansson by the end of the season at center. So now Marcus Johansson can go back to being in his natural spot on the wing. And it's a good addition for Minnesota because they needed another guy who could pass the puck around, dish it, and also score a couple goals, get a couple helpers. Minnesota might not be done dealing. They just locked up Jonas Brodin, one of their top defensemen, up for 7 years. Perhaps could we see a Matt Dumba move, Tom?
I think it's possible, but I also think what I'm also noticing what they're trying to do up there is they're trying to get some older guys moved out. They just moved Staal out. I read the other day that they're not going to bring Mikko Koivu back. You still have those albatross contracts here with Suter and Parise, and I don't think they're going to be able to get rid of either one of those guys. But, I mean, I could see a move for Dumba. The thing with Minnesota is I know they're trying to get the older guys out, but are they really trying to rebuild? I don't know.
It's really kind of tough to see where they're kind of going with it. And, Minnesota, they still have some decent pieces left on this team that can get it done. But my personal 2 cents about it is if you're just going to kind of drag your feet into the playoffs and not really actually make a legitimate push, maybe you take this draft and kind of evaluate what is the best move for you. They're going to be picking around number 10 this year, which could be a really interesting spot to spend it, depending on who is left over. They could be looking at maybe, the top goaltending prospect in Yaroslav Askarov. They could be looking at another winger in Anton Lundell.
Lundell's actually a center, Brian.
Oh, sorry about that. My bad.
Lundell's a center. Yeah, Lundell's a center.
Thank you for correcting me there. I had that in my notes. Yeah, they could be looking at a center in Lundell. Lundell, who's got a fantastic shot, who could really help on a power play and kind of slot in potentially early on and really make the jump to the NHL early. But for Buffalo, this is definitely a good deal. They needed center depth badly. And Eric Staal looks like he's not totally done yet. I mean, he's 36, 37 years old. He is not done. He is not done at all. Moving right along in our news and notes. So I'm wearing my Blues jersey today because there's a particular, elephant in the room that we got to talk about on this team, and that's Alex Pietrangelo, who notes from this week, there's rumblings saying that he could be testing the free agency market. Tom, what do you think about this?
It's definitely interesting, but with this hard, flat cap that's coming through, sometimes you just got to cut a man loose. And I guess the unfortunate part about that is he's the one to cut loose. I guess they can't agree on salary or whatnot. I mean, Pietrangelo, he's still young. He's only 30 years old. And, I could see him going. I could see him going a couple places and having an impact. I know we've heard Toronto and Anaheim. At 30 years old, if I were in his shoes, I think Toronto might be the best spot for him to go. Just because Toronto is in need of a number one defenseman. They have all those. They have pretty much their offense. They have their first two lines set up, but what they don't have is a defense. They don't have is that number one defenseman, to quarterback power play, to lead lead their defense. And I think he'll be perfect for that role. But Anaheim would be interesting too. But Anaheim, I don't know right now. You got to see what they're going to do in the draft. They did draft that kid Trevor Zegras last year. But I just don't know what Anaheim right now, if he was to go there, would it be the best decision for him? He may get the payday that he wants, but he may, in 5 years from now, saying, okay, I want to get the hell out of here. I want to go try and win another Stanley Cup. Whereas if he goes to Toronto, and if they can somehow make him fit under their cap and keep everybody and somehow fit him in, they could be in this conversation for a Stanley Cup contender next year too.
And this is very true. I mean, there's a lot left to kind of unfold with Alex Pietrangelo. A lot of me wants to say that Alex Pietrangelo is going to stay with the St. Louis Blues. And, he's their captain. He won a Stanley Cup with them. There's a lot of, sentimental value there. But this is a man also who is one of the top defensemen in the entire league. And when push comes to shove, guy wants to get paid. And he wants to go to the place that's going to pay him the best. And if talks are stalling right now in St. Louis, and I could see Toronto swooping in. I could see Anaheim swooping in. Toronto, the thing that's interesting with them is they would need to move some money around, which they're going to do regardless this offseason. They need to move money around. There's talks that they need to possibly free up space and maybe push a William Karlsson out, maybe see if there's a suitor there that they can maybe take back some draft picks, maybe take back some prospects. But if they're going for Pietrangelo, I think they need to move a little bit more money around than that to make it possible to go for a long-term deal on Pietrangelo. For Anaheim's case, it really kind of depends on what happens in the draft, because and for those who might not know, Anaheim's going to be sitting at number 6 overall for this upcoming draft. And I could see if a prospect like defensive prospect Jamie Drysdale falls on their lap, they might just swoop in and take Jamie Drysdale and be happy with that, and maybe not go and pick up an Alex Pietrangelo because they got exactly what they need. They got a guy who can move the puck on the power play and can be a dynamic, smaller kind of Quinn Hughes type of defensive prospect for them, and maybe kind of catch that lightning in a bottle there. But the only reason why I could see Jamie Drysdale dropping to them is if you have a situation where Steve Yzerman takes based on need with the Detroit Red Wings in the number 4 overall pick, and they take like Yaroslav Askarov and kind of shoots the moon, which is not out of the realm of possibility for Steve Yzerman. He did it last year. He did it with Moritz Seider last year. So. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could do it again. So this could be something that actually happens for Anaheim. But that being said, if they don't go out and get Drysdale, Anaheim could be a really nice landing spot for Pietrangelo. And this is an Anaheim team that's not too far away from, possibly being a contender. They've got some interesting pieces on that team that they just need a little bit more scoring depth. But you give them Pietrangelo, that's one of the best defenses in all of the NHL. They've got him, they've got Fowler, they've got Lindblom. That's a really, really strong unit that they have in front of them. We're going to move on from the Alex Pietrangelo topic now, though. So Gary Bettman, the commissioner of the NHL, started to talk about the upcoming season and kind of the unknown aspect of things, of when's the season going to start. So let's predict right now. Tom, when do you think the season's going to begin?
I was really on board with an early December date. That's obviously looking like it's not going to happen anymore. I am still thinking mid-December. They'll play all the way until the end of April. How many games and who's going to play who? That's going to be interesting because we're not going to know at that time how things are going to be with COVID and with traveling across the border or not. It may be they may do 4 hub cities and teams traveling in and out of there. They may do what they've done in the lockout years where you only play teams in your conference, and then the only time that 2 teams from the East and West each other is in the Stanley Cup Finals. They may do that, or they may do just kind of an amalgamated schedule where you're not going to play all 82 games, but maybe you'll play everybody out West once, or vice versa. If you're in the West, play everybody in the East once, and then they somehow just divide it up amongst the divisions and the conferences that way. I do think it's going to be a mid-December start. Although it wouldn't surprise me if they do push it back, and if things do get relaxed, if we do get a vaccine, if life as we know it starts going back to normal, it wouldn't surprise me if they do start with the Winter Classic on January 1st as the first game of the season. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if it came down to that. I'd rather not see it that way. I'd rather it start in December, just as a selfish Ranger fan in me, because I want to see Lafreniere and I want to see all these guys on the ice. But, at the same time, I do think it wouldn't surprise me at all if we start January 1st with the Winter Classic.
And that would be a very poetic type of start, to kind of start with the outdoor game, kind of get everybody jazzed up about hockey again and really get everybody back into the NHL season. It would be kind of cool to see the NHL start maybe late December, early January. But, there's the other aspect of things where you also have to kind of consider trying to get things back on track into a regular schedule where, maybe you shorten the next season so that way the following season starts on time, everything gets back to normal, maybe even talk about having fans in the stands again, getting that stadium revenue again. But I tend to agree with you, Tom. I think a mid-December, maybe even pushing to early January as the potential start time for this upcoming season. And if you ask me, it's going to be probably between a 40 to 55 game season. You don't need to push it too heavy. You don't need to push it too hard. I just, it's tough to try to fill up that space.
No, I get it. I think it's going to be longer than that, though, because they've done the 48 game seasons in 95 and 13 where they had the lockout years. And you got to remember, those seasons were starting maybe around January 20th, and they were still getting 48 games in. The only real difference was that instead of playoffs starting in April, they would start the playoffs in May, and they play the whole month of April. So with that in mind, I could see them, if they start in January and do the whole month, you could probably get a 54 to a 58 game season. If you start in January, you start in the middle of December, you might be able to get a 60 game season in. But like I said, it all depends on what's going on in the world and who can travel where and what can happen with everything.
There's a lot of unknowns in that regard, and certainly we at I-80 Sports hope that everybody stays safe out there and uses their common sense going forward, so that way we can get sports back up and running full time and everything back to normal. But to move on from this topic and looking at into next season, we've got to finish this upcoming season, which, for those of you that might live under a rock right now, the Stanley Cup is currently going on, where right now it is the Dallas Stars up against the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Dallas Stars, who have already taken game 1, so the Dallas Stars are up 1-0. Tom, what did you think about that game?
I can tell you right now, Tampa looked tired that game. They really did. Dallas had almost a week off. Tampa had 2 days off. And in my opinion, even though they're playing in a hub, in my opinion, that's just a little unfair. In previous years, it didn't matter if a conference final went 6 games, went 7 games, went 5 games, if both went 5, they wanted to start the finals early. Teams would at least get 2 or 3 days off before they had to play. To tell Tampa, who went to overtime Thursday, and okay, yeah, Friday off, but now you got to play Saturday. I really don't think that was. I don't think that was good on the league to do that. I know you're in a hub city. I know you don't have to travel or anything. You don't have to worry about one team traveling to this place or another team traveling to that place. But I do think that they should have given Tampa another day off. I really do. I don't like that they did that. I think they're trying to just squeeze this in so they can get it done and over with. I think a lot of players in the hub cities are getting upset, but you know what? At the same time, if I'm a player in Tampa Bay Lightning, my mind is on one thing right now: not getting out of the hub cities, about winning that Stanley Cup. And for the league to tell me that, oh, you only got 1 day off, and while Dallas had almost a week, I just don't think that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't know if it was the best look on the league to start the Stanley Cup so soon after Tampa had just finished that series with the Islanders. And I think it's plainly obvious. I mean, the Lightning looked tired. And as tired as the Lightning looked, what was interesting that I noted in the third period of play of game one was at one point Tampa Bay, because of the opportunities that were given to them, they outshot Dallas in that period at one point. Like I think it was around the midpoint of the third period, almost 16-1. And Anton Khudobin, the goaltender for Dallas Stars, just stood on his head in that net, and he has been absolutely stunning this playoffs. And he's a guy that, I'll be honest, I have written off throughout this entire playoff, and wrongfully so, because he has really, really kept this Dallas Stars team in the Stanley Cup and currently winning this series as of right now. Tom, what are your thoughts on Anton Khudobin?
Oh, yeah, he definitely stood on his head that game for them. Definitely a great performance. Kind of aching the performance of Kirk McLean back in Game 1 of the finals in '94. We're going way back when. He definitely, I don't want to say he won that game for Dallas, but it's a big reason why they did win. Tampa does have a lot of firepower, but at the same time, losing Game 1 in the Stanley Cup final, it's not the end of the world. It's happened. I brought up '94 before. I'm sick of '94 as a Ranger fan, but the Rangers lost Game 1 in '94. The greatest team I ever saw play to 0-2 Detroit Red Wings, they lost Game 1 to Carolina. And if we want to take it back to real recent history, the Caps lost Game 1 to Vegas, and last year the Blues lost Game 1 to Boston. Losing Game 1 doesn't really mean too much, as long as you can bounce back and play better in Games 2, Games 3, so on and so forth. Now, if Tampa loses tonight, then you really got to start thinking, okay, you really got to start thinking what's happening here. What's happening? Because I don't think, and I tried to look it up today, I just didn't have the time. I don't think any team has ever come back from being down 0-2, at least in the modern era, in the 7-game Stanley Cup final era, has ever come back and won it from being down 0-2. I know if we want to go back to 1928, my favorite team, the Rangers, I think, actually they didn't drop the first 2 to Montreal, so forget that. We can forget that didn't happen. I was wrong on that. But I don't think anybody's ever gone down 0-2 and came back and won 4 straight in the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, I would have to check on that stat as well. And certainly if anybody has that stat, drop it in the comments below. But it's definitely not a death sentence to lose Game 1. Tampa Bay has plenty of firepower to come back strong in Game 2, especially since they've had now a gap day to kind of rest, kind of think about things, stew on certain things, and potentially even hit it back harder in Game 2. This is not a Tampa Bay team that's just going to easily roll over. We've seen time in and time again throughout this playoffs that Tampa Bay is gritty. And that's no pun intended for those Philadelphia Flyers fans. I'm not talking about your mascot. No, I'm talking about the fact that this Tampa Bay team is very different from last year's Tampa Bay team. Last year's Tampa Bay team was very much built on talent, all talent, all talent. This is a Tampa Bay team that is built from their bottom 6 up to their top 6. This is a team that gets a ton of help from their third line. And that third line, and I've been saying it for weeks, is one of the best third lines in hockey with Blake Coleman, Yanni Gourde, and Barclay Goodrow, 2 of which are guys that weren't on this Tampa Bay team till this year. Actually, not until March of this year. So these are really big contributors right now for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like this is game time for them. So I do expect Tampa Bay to really kind of get back into things, really get back on track. But it's no knock on Dallas either, because Dallas has had a number of guys who have been really helping them out. Gioranta really just kind of came by surprise. 5 goals already in I think it's only been like 8 games. So now let's talk about some little news and notes with this current Stanley Cup. One person who we haven't seen in a while in this playoffs has been Steven Stamkos, the captain of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And he's been trying to work out a little bit, and he still feels a little bit iffy. Tom, do you think we're going to see him in the Stanley Cup or what?
I think we will. He did skate this morning. And honestly, I wouldn't surprise me if he played tonight. He may be a game-time decision, though. If they do lose tonight and go down 0-2, he definitely plays in Game 3. He definitely plays in Game 3 if he doesn't play tonight. But what I'm saying is that I just think that he'll add another another offensive threat to their second line. He can play on the wing. It's not going to disrupt anything. I'm literally losing my train of thought here. It's not going to disrupt anything. And plus, remember, they've been dressing 11 forwards, 7 defensemen these entire playoffs. So you never know. You stick him as a wing, maybe on the second line with Cirelli, and then you know what? Then you can drop somebody on the fourth line. You don't have to dress 7 defensemen. You can match up a little bit better.
Yeah, and that's true. Personally, if it's me, I don't know if Stamkos dresses tonight. I think it's kind of wishful thinking for Tampa Bay fans at the moment. I think it's better to kind of play on the conservative side of things and assume he might not dress tonight. But I think no matter what the result is, whether they tie the series 1-1 or whether they go down 0-2, I think we could expect to see Stamkos by Game 3. I think by that point, I think he will be ready to go. I think he will be set to, get the ball rolling for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that's definitely a good rallying point for them to kind of rally around their captain who's been down, and to have him back would be huge.
Actually, there's one thing I did want to add before. I know I said that we didn't know if there would. There was never a team that went down 0-2 in the finals and won. I was wrong on that one. 1971, Chicago went up 2-0 on Montreal. Montreal ultimately won a series in 7.
There you go. Thank you for being our historian on that one, Tom. I appreciate it, man. So now let's look at some guys who we have talked about for the past couple weeks as maybe some potential Conn Smythe talks, playoff MVP talks. And I wanted to highlight 3 guys particularly who I think have potential in winning this award. And let's predict who we think has the greatest potential of winning it. So we're talking Anton Khudobin, we're talking Miro Heiskanen, and we're talking Braden Point. So out of those 3 guys, who do you think has a really good shot of winning the Conn Smythe this year?
Like I said, I've mentioned this in previous episodes. All depends on who wins this thing. Unless somebody on the losing team puts in some crazy effort, I think it's really going to depend on who wins this series. And if it's Tampa, I'm thinking it's Point. If it's Dallas, I'm thinking it's Heiskanen. I did say a few weeks ago it'd be cool if Heiskanen won it, just because a defenseman from a losing team has never won the Conn Smythe Trophy, so that would just be a little outlier. But there is one guy who kind of has been flying under the radar here who I would actually like to throw into this conversation here, and that is Victor Hedman. He was great in the Islander series, and it's weird. When I was watching him play in Game 6, he kind of reminds me of Ray Bourque when he was in his prime up in Boston. He's not like he doesn't have a booming shot. He doesn't have like the rushing type of defense. He's not the rushing type of defenseman that's say Paul Coffey or Bobby Orr, but he seems to just, when he's in the offensive zone, he seems to get himself in the right places to either score a goal or get an assist or create something. And it's a lot of people haven't really been talking about Hedman, but it wouldn't surprise me, especially if Hedman turns it on in these next few games, that he starts getting some consideration as well.
And that's a really good thought, and that's a really interesting thought, especially since for the past series now, like ever since the start of Eastern Conference Final, Victor Hedman has been on a real kind of underlying tear that not a lot of people have kind of realized at all. And I agree. I think Victor Hedman is absolutely valid to enter into this argument. The one devil's advocate play that I'll play for Anton Khudobin, let's say hypothetically speaking, Tampa Bay does go on to win the Stanley Cup and Khudobin keeps doing well throughout this. It's not out of the realm that something like this has happened before. Back in 2003, the Devils won the Stanley Cup in Game 7. Jean-Sebastien Giguère, the goaltender for the Anaheim Mighty Ducks at the time, and that was the Mighty Ducks at that point. He won the Conn Smythe Trophy and that was a controversial pick at that point. It was majorly controversial.
I think he denied Brodeur the only Conn Smythe he would have ever got. And then it also happened in 1987 with Ron Hextall with Edmonton and Philly. And I believe it happened sometime in the 60s. Roger Crozier was the starter for Detroit. They lost to the Leafs, but he won the Conn Smythe. So it's not out of the realm for a goalie on a losing team to win it.
Yeah, it would be more interesting to see, especially a defenseman from a losing team win it, which is why it would be cool. Like in the hypothetical sense, if Tampa Bay wins it and Miro Heiskanen manages to run away with it, that would be a really, really cool story and a really cool little piece of history that we can add on with that. Final predictions for the Stanley Cup, Tom. What do you think we're going to see this week? What do you think is going to happen?
Despite what we saw on Saturday night, I'm still sticking with my initial prediction that I withheld from everybody in the I-80 sports world last Thursday night. I'm going Tampa in 6. I still think they have the firepower to win. If Stamkos comes back, that gives them another offensive option, another offensive threat, provided he's healthy. We don't know. He may be playing it may be an emotional thing. I remember sort of the same thing Carolina did. They brought Eric Cole back for the last 2 games in 2006, and I don't know if Eric Cole was really healthy, but he played. But I do think Tampa in 6. One little outlier I'll say here is that you have Game 4 and Game 5, I believe, on back-to-back nights. And if Tampa is hurting, if Point's hurting, if Stamkos comes back and gets hurt, that really is playing towards Dallas' strengths, though. But like I say, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But I'm still sticking with Tampa in 6.
Yeah, I'm going to tend to agree with you on this regard in terms of your pick. And this is something I held close to the vest from the I-80 sports world as well. Bob even, kind of poking fun at that as well. On the discussion. Thanks, Bob. But I am actually saying Tampa Bay in 7 games because I think Dallas has a lot of fight in them. I think they're a better team than people, really truly believe. This is a stacked Dallas team that, not a lot of people are truly buying into. But don't sleep on Dallas. Dallas is a really, really good team. It wouldn't shock me in the least if they ended up winning in 7, but my prediction is going to be solidly Tampa Bay in 7. I just think this is Tampa Bay's year. This is Tampa Bay's year to finally win it, finally redeem themselves from last year, and they've been doing it time and time again throughout this entire playoffs and just really just rallying in overtime and just playing hard, putting up points when they need to. And the rallying point for them this particular series could be getting their captain back, and that could be a really big difference maker for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So my prediction is Tampa Bay in 7. Tom, any last notes before we wrap for today?
I just want to close with one more fun fact. This is the 3rd time Tampa's been playing in the Stanley Cup Finals. They've never won a Game 1. They lost Game 1 in Calgary in 2004, Game 1 in Chicago in 2015, and they lost Game 1 in Dallas the other night. Doesn't mean anything. They beat Calgary, as we know, back in 2004. Some people are still disputing that to this day, especially our friends up in Calgary, if we have any Calgary Flame fans on here. And, they beat Chicago in 2015. They did lose that series, but, they had Chicago. They had Chicago in the grips, too. So, like I said before, losing Game 1, not the end of the world.
Yeah, now that definitely is a really cool fun fact. But guess we're just going to have to tune in and watch. And for those of you that want to keep track of the Stanley Cup, Game 2 broadcast tonight on NBC at 8 p.m. But that's going to do it for us today. I'm Brian. He's Tom. Make sure you follow us at i80sports.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at i80sports_sportsNHL and our Facebook group, the I-80 Sports Discussion Group. And you can catch Tom and I every Monday night for your daily dose of NHL content. Thank you guys again for watching. Make sure you follow I-80 Sports and the NHL, and we'll see you guys soon.